We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
The CEDIA Pickleball Meetup is returning for its second year of friendly competition and networking.
And Matt, I expect to see you there even if you're not playing.
Nope.
I would rather die.
On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk AV Pro and RTI, Google's AI automation creation tool, and leveraging social media. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 486, Craft Your Personality. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt T. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Jeremy Glowacki. He's the editor-in-chief over at Projector Central. How are you, sir?
Doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me back. It's almost InfoComm for me, which is weird because I don't usually go, but this is a new thing.
You have to.
New job. Yeah. So
new shows.
That's coming right up.
Yes, it is. Then we have Mr. Mitchell Klein. He's the Vice President of Business Strategy over at CEDIA. How are you, sir?
I'm fabulous. I'm actually in Southern California right now at the CEDIA Tech Summit in Irvine. So I get to escape the cold of the Northeast to the extreme heat of Southern California.
It's going to be hot up this way today and tomorrow. So you're missing it. All right, gentlemen, we are going to kick this off with a short comment, a mention, an honorable mention for my good friend, Mr. John Siaka over on Residential Systems. There's a presser on the CEDIA Pickleball Meetup is returning for its second year of friendly competition and networking. This is happening the day before Expo on Tuesday, September 2nd, between 2 and 6. It is moved to an indoor venue, so hopefully you'll still have to deal with elevation, but not so much potential heat. And you can also use your regular paddles, I believe. So go check that out.
Yep.
It is a great event, and I love to rag on pickleball, and I'm trying very hard not to because we're excited about the event and the money that they're raising, et cetera, et cetera. So go check that out and register. They're hoping to have a bigger event this year they're shooting for 100 people that are playing on 13 courts, et cetera. All the jazz. Should be a blast.
Hey, just be there. Listen, it's a good fundraiser for the CEDIA, workforce development and the foundation, which is the nonprofit. And, every one of you watching this is going, where am I going to get my next new hire from? And so even if you don't want to play pickleball, kind of show up and help support it. It's a great event for the right reason.
Very much so. That's what.
And Matt, I expect to see you there even if you're not playing.
Nope. I'm contractually.
Are you a beginner
Yes.
still, Mitchell? Or
Still
are
am,
you,
yeah. I haven't played since last year. Yeah, just
Yeah, me either. And I didn't take part in the coaching, which I should have, because John
Didn't help.
coached me up, John Siaka.
Yeah.
It didn't help you either. Okay.
No, it didn't help.
Yeah, there's that. All right, we are going to move on to our next story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today. AV Pro Global has acquired RTI Control. This came out, I believe, on Thursday, late Thursday afternoon last week, May 28th, 29th, somewhere in there. It was announced that AV Pro, which is the parent company to AV Pro Edge, now Audio Control, Bullet Train, then Audio, and Meridio, has entered an agreement to acquire RTI and bring together those platforms, which is really big news. For both companies here. One, it's bringing a significant control arm into AV Pro, and for RTI, it's again just bringing it into the family. Jeremy, when you see this, is this a right time, right place? Is this a me too? Everybody has to have a full package solution. Is this AV Pro just looking to again expand their control capabilities?
It's a good question. I'm really contemplating what that answer is because I didn't see this coming. I do know that mergers and acquisitions has been kind of a thing that AV Pros has been developing a skill at, because their acquisition of audio control in particular was a big one, and I felt like that was audio control was like seeking out sort of that opportunity, and it made sense when it happened, and that was a really good fit between those companies. And I wouldn't have expected RTI to be the next one. They're always a truly independent brand. A small version of Crestron in that regard, being both privately owned companies, but it just seems so independent and so, Minnesota, Midwest, its own unique kind of little company that just kept plugging along and was relevant to a certain level of integrator, because, you could still do full control, not full control, but you could do full custom. That was like still a thing for a lot of dealers that just wanted not to have a packaged kind of controller automation solution. And whether that makes sense or not for a company in terms of efficiency, I think it's where some of them felt that's where their creativity, their artistry kind of could still reside. And how these two come together, other than the fact that the leadership, I would assume that a lot of the RTI leadership would remain in place, at least for the moment. There's a lot of, kind of intelligence there that probably is unique to what they do that you wouldn't necessarily have already in the AV Pro kind of group. But obviously there's a lot of engineers there as well. But, I would assume Joe Roberts would stay in a leadership position there in some capacity. I don't see them bringing all of that operation to where I'm trying to remember not Montana, where are they located? South Dakota. It's northwest, Western U.S. So I would say that there's probably some combination of what you're asking, where it's good to have a control piece, a forward-facing piece. But I don't think this makes them a all-in solution by any means. So maybe it just was the next piece that they were looking to add, and it should be really interesting to see how the two cultures come together. I think that it could be a good fit. Love to learn more about it though as it evolves.
Yeah, it's a great point. They are out of South Dakota.
South Dakota, yes,
Sioux Falls. Mitch, this was a very interesting story for me to see when it dropped late Thursday, and yet somewhat I did not expect it, but it was not unexpected, if that makes sense. Both of these companies fit me as two very similar ethos, if you will. What do you think this does for AV Pro as far as competing with some of those other really, really big brands that have kind of the umbrella corporations? Is this just one step for them moving closer to that?
It enables a few things. Number one, it enables a deeper integration with a specific focus on the products that AV Pro wants to be presenting and selling through. So, I mean, that's a big plus for them. Also, from a competitive perspective, it enables them to kind of bring RTI in and perhaps make it a little less attractive for some of AV Pro competitors, which is a possibility. But we're in a time now when businesses need to grow, and it's not that easy. I mean, we've all seen this in terms of the CEDIA integrators really kind of reaching maximum potential, and in order to grow their companies and to grow the level of the amount of installations, it's a challenge because things of scale and also workforce related. So, and I've heard this from a number of manufacturers that have done my listening around the country, this past year, in terms of growing your dealer base with new dealers and growing your business with the existing dealers. So this is one way to be able to grow your business if you're AV Pro, is to bring in a line that is complementary to what you have and can help you sell more of what you've got and also add to the overall revenue by adding RTI products to it. So it sounds like a good plan.
Let me kind of pontificate for a second with both of you and get your thoughts on this. RTI has also had some form of partnership. I don't know exactly how this worked out, but they did have a partnership with Bluestream, which is specific or normally a heavy European video distribution over IP company that has been making inroads into North America, again, through that partnership with RTI. What do you, I think we can kind of assume what's going to happen there, but does that complicate their strategy?
Well, first of all, I've got Bluestream right behind me, so as you can see. But in terms of that, so companies not going to cut off their relationships if they've got a good relationship. So I can't imagine they're just going to stop supporting Bluestream products. Whether or not they continue to develop within it is anyone's guess. But if they opt to let RTI grow the way it needs to grow, if they let it be its own organization, then it should continue doing that type of work. I mean, it'd be really difficult to say, hey, keep buying my RTI product, even though my Bluesound stuff is, no longer compatible with it. So, my take on it would be the very worst case, they'll just simply maintain what they have. Best case, they'll continue to develop and deeper that integration.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, gentlemen, let's change topics for a second. This comes to us from CE Pro. Google's AI-powered smart home automation creation tool is almost here. It's a Gemini-powered home API that is being rolled out to select group partners, expanding access to AI-powered automation programming across the platform. Essentially, you'll be able to use Gemini with the base units to then have Gemini help you create scenes and automations and all these other fun things as they roll this out. Mitch, let me start with you on this. This is going to live and likely be very, very highly used in that builder market, in that DIY market, etc. What does this mean for their partners, their customers? And is this kind of just the next evolutionary step that we would expect?
I'm not sure what you mean by their partners. So whose partners? Google's partners or the builders' partners?
Google's partners. No, okay, Google's partners. Yep. Sorry.
When Google sneezes, everyone says, bless you. So the reality is that people are going to pay a lot of attention to it. Google went and made a major investment into ADT a few years ago. So they're definitely very interested in the whole overall integration market, security market. They're paying close attention to it. As far as a partner, you want to not just pay attention to it, but you want to step up and participate in it if there's any way to do that. We do know Google has a reputation for starting things and saying, that's something more interesting over there. A squirrel over there. They've done that with some of the lines that they've brought in. But these days with the platform, the wireless platform Matter, and what they've been doing with some of their other products, pay close attention to it. I don't see that as a competitive reality behind products like Josh and other voice control systems. To me, it seems to validate it more than compete with it. So I think this is really cool stuff, and I'd be paying very close attention to it.
That's a great point. Jeremy, Mitch brought up the validation of what NICE is doing with their voice assistant in their control platform, what obviously Josh AI is doing in their platform now. If they're able to do this effectively and consumers are able to effectively, again, say something into Gemini, create an automation, whether simplistic or expansive, how does that potentially challenge the infrastructure and the systems that our traditional AV control systems have?
I always think that there's going to be a competitive threat from these big behemoth companies, and then the CEDIA channel just plugs along and does its thing, and it still needs to exist for those who don't want to touch any of it. Obviously, it's like the 1%ers and above. They're a lot of the client base, so that's always going to be something that is a paid service from an integrator, not a DIY. But I do think it opens the market to a broader potential customer if this starts to really pick up. And the thing that changes is this AI component and the voice combined with AI, because I do think that simplifies it finally, because along the way, there have been challenges, but you still have to have kind of a gadgety kind of personality, or this DIY that has patience, that can go through the steps and put in the right pieces to make it all work. Mm-hmm. It's not always that easy of a thing. You see big brands like video companies like an LG or something putting in automation kind of components to their app, where it starts to tell you what your washer and dryer has started, stopped, whatever. You can schedule things and it shows up on your TV. And so there's like these like elements that start to just make sense that I didn't even know I signed up for that, or I didn't know that was going to happen. And it's just happening. And that's kind of like those things that used to be custom programmed into like a Crestron system or Control 4 or whatever. And that now you're starting to see that just in a mass market situation, but didn't really have to be much work on the end user side. Mm-hmm. I think AI is going to enable a lot more of these things just to be like organically developed in your home as you buy products and pieces that fit together. And I think Google, being such a massive piece in the middle, could very well, lead that charge for a broader consumer. I don't see it cutting into what CI automation companies necessarily do, because that is a lot more premium of a package. And maybe you'll start to see integrators who start their companies based around a Google product. As some I've talked to, like Apple Home or whatever, they go that route, and it's like turning the page on the old school way of doing things, but they're still considered a custom integrator. They're just using that as their core. So I could see it fitting in, but not necessarily as a massive threat necessarily to the existing.
I jump on that. And I wonder, as we look at integrations, there's been a lot of pomp and circumstance around this new wireless protocol the last few years. It's a matter which will mean that, you're no longer locked in, right? So you're not locked into Google or locked into Apple. Well, where is that now? So you have basically two different things that are being discussed and promoted. One is, hey, this is what Google's doing with their own AI. But how does that work with everyone else's AI? Is this now going to be compatible? So it's not spoken about really at this point in time, but one needs to take a leap of faith and say they really should be looking at it from a full holistic industry perspective that says you don't have to commit to an Apple or to a Google or to a Samsung, that they're now all with this great AI. You can bring in any product here and the Google product will just simply line up and connect with everything. Well, okay. We'll see, won't we?
Is there a chance that this is a bit of a watershed moment, the same way the voice remote was, that caused a bunch of our industry's control companies to kind of step up a little bit and do we got to compete with Comcast and their voice remote?
I think if anything, it's just more about what those companies that are in our industry better already have some kind of a idea about the AI voice assistant kind of concept, like NICE is doing, like Josh has been doing forever. I think that has to be in the plans. And this is just more like kind of a prodding of, you better not let these guys creep up on you. You need to have this sorted out. I would be shocked if the other control brands don't have something in the works already on this sort of front.
Just also keep in mind that I know a lot of the folks at Google who've been doing this work. They're very smart. They've been watching the industry. They're participating in the industry. So don't think of Google as, they're not in touch with what's going on. They're very much in touch with what's going on. They're very close to this, and they're smart and they're good at it.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to watch how they approach it, and then how the industry somewhat responds, if you will, for again, lack of a better term. All right, gentlemen, let's hit our last story of the day. This comes to us also from CE Pro, an integrator insider, how to leverage social media to engage potential clients. This is an integrator out of Acoustic Design Systems, who's using, again, social media to try and engage with customers and find new customers. Go read through the article. They cover a handful of kind of ideas and concepts as far as how to leverage social to not only grow your brand, but also hopefully your customer base. Jeremy, let me come back and start with you on this. I am not throwing shade at this at all, even though it might kind of sound that way for a second. I am amazed that we do still have to talk about this in today's day and age. Gosh, I met a bunch of you back when I did my first like social media panel at CEDIA, like, gosh, when it was in Indianapolis years and years and years ago. This is somewhat the same story that we've been hearing for years, just new evidence and new approaching or new approaches. How do integrators get onto this if they have not figured this out yet?
It's amazing when you talk to folks who just don't have a real sense, especially in a technology field, for something like social media. But then again, there are a lot of folks that just don't have the business acumen, the management acumen that you need in this industry after years and years of telling that same story. But I don't know. I think that, first of all, this Chris Darrell, who wrote this piece that kind of lined up what they do, it's pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. But he and his wife Amanda do a great job out of Vegas. That he used to write a piece for me in residential systems, and then we covered him. I had him on the podcast, and I see him at buying group meetings, and he's really just really good at promoting in clever ways. And Amanda, his wife, is a lot of times the one that does the video sort of spokesperson in their videos. And they kind of put it in that YouTube video sort of style, which I think is the way to go, which is beyond just social media. It's having that visual video presence on YouTube that folks who are just doing research come across, and it looks like an inviting process or technology, how to use these control systems and motorized shades, and just making your house seem like a better place to live. So I think it goes beyond just like, hey, you need to have a Facebook post, or, you need to go on X and, tweet or whatever it is called these days. You need to X something out. It's about having that regular presence in the world and showing that this is not a scary proposition to be a part of, to bring someone in to make create a smart home, or bring in efficient automation technologies. They don't necessarily do DIY type videos like you would go on and learn about, but they do kind of try to make it seem more inviting and less scary. And I think that's a lot of what I got from this piece is just having that under control. And it takes effort, but the technologies are easy. You can do it with pretty much a smartphone and maybe some wireless mics that are pretty inexpensive. The idea of production and editing and all of that, it's with AI technologies become a lot simpler as well. So putting together a video and making it look pretty professional doesn't take a lot these days. And I think that's the point. Just don't miss out on this opportunity to be seen and heard and looked at as an expert in your field.
Yeah, that's a great point. Mitch, wrap this up for us. My kind of takeaway overview of this was, again, you just kind of have to create a strategy and figure out what your voice should be for your company online. And it should be similar to all of your marketing, right? It's got to be consistent. Mm-hmm. How do you figure out your voice?
Wow. Well, first of all, just to the first part of the question, why do we have to talk about this again, or why are we still talking about it? I think an important part of it is because so many dealers have said, I get all the business I can get from word of mouth, right? Mm-hmm. And what happens if we get even more job opportunities that we can't deliver upon? So, in some ways, not doing the social media and building your brand out there has helped them from becoming overwhelmed with work, which is, by the way, those are all bad arguments, but I'm just saying they're making those arguments, and in the reality, how do you get your voice? You have your own customer, you have your company culture. If you're not sure exactly what it is, bring in a consultant and help figure that part out. But you got to know who you are, who your customers are, what you're trying to achieve. So you can't just throw videos together and say, hey, look, I hung that TV. I can do that for you too. Because there's so many others who are doing exactly the same thing. So to your point, you really want to craft that personality. You really want whatever social media you use to be consistent with this unique personality that is you and that is your company, and get that voice.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, gentlemen, let's leave it there. Thank you both so much for joining us. Mitch, if people want to connect with you, learn more about CEDIA, where can they do that?
Well, you can always go to CEDIA.org, or you can reach out to me directly, which is mklein@CEDIA.org.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mr. Glowacki, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Projector Central, what can they find that information?
Yeah, go to projectorcentral.com and check out our latest reviews and news, and even a periodic podcast where we go kind of deep dive into the review, talking to the excellent writers and editors who we have reviewing those projectors. And I will be at InfoComm. So like I said, look for me there, doing a lot of video interviews. And also LinkedIn's a great place to find me. So hope to hear from everybody out there.
Excellent. Thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on most of the socials. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is Erin Marmoran of EdTech. The world of higher ed AV is growing rapidly. That's why each month we hear from the best and brightest from colleges and universities all over the U.S. Check out EdTech on avnation.tv or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.